From the PSIA-AASI satellite studios in Corvallis, Oregon, I'm George Thomas, and we are so excited to have Ying Liu back on with us, back from another women's summit. Ying, sounds like you've had a great season so far and more great things ahead, but would love for you to share what happened at the 2025 Women's Summit.
Yeah, I mean, the Women's Summit was held again at Solitude this year, and it was fantastic. Even, I mean, maybe dare I say better than last year. It feels like every year is improves on itself. The theme was connecting through power and grace, which is really powerful in a number of ways, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But got to ski with the national team women. I think all of the women from the Alpine side were there, and obviously there were women from the snowboard side. Um, it was There was a telemark option as well, which is really great. And I know they're really hoping to expand and really invite that inclusivity from and include cross country or more cross country next year. We got to try on different skis and learn about boots and demo carve. So yeah, it was fantastic.
I have to add, I know you telemark. Did you go? Did you free the heel for a while?
I did. Yeah, we had afternoon sessions that were kind of optional sessions. You could choose from a number of offerings. And I did bring my telemark skis. And it was three of us. Patty Banks was the clinician, and Eliza Kuntz actually joined me in freeing her heel. So that was a really fun experience, just because, especially coming from someone like Eliza, who has such a strong alpine background. She mentioned how just getting on tellies feels so humbling, especially when you're so proficient in another sport that's very similar. And so we talked about how that was a really great way to get back into a beginner mindset, which obviously our guests are really more kind of in that realm. So
So
yeah.
power and grace. That you have to tell us more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, um, Dee's keynote, I think what really highlighted or encapsulated that for me was a picture of her and Nancy Oakes Hall when they were both on the national team together. And Dee was known as kind of that. She embodied the power, and Nancy was really the grace in that. But what I love about the idea in general is that I was able to take it into a telemark clinic on International Women's Day and talk about how telemark itself really embodies power and grace, just because it's so muscular instead of skeletal in terms of, how do you actually make the tool bend? So there's that power component to it. And at the same time, it's very graceful because there's such a like smoothness and progressive movement in telemark when done really well. And so it's a combination of like telemark really embodying power and grace, but also then bringing it into the idea of when we're trying something new, it's there's this inner strength we bring, right, in order to be comfortable with failing. And at the same time, we also have to allow grace for to give us space to fail and feel like, it's okay that I'm not going to be perfect at this the first time. So I really loved that theme and was able to bring it right into my teaching.
I was just going to say, is that I mean, I totally see that applying to our movement patterns, but does that also apply to our teaching?
Yeah, I think so. Um, and also thinking about really being guest centric too, right? Is what are our guests want out of their ski experience? Are they looking for that explosive power and shredding all day and skiing the steeps, the gnarliest things they can find, or are they looking to flow and kind of move down the mountain? And it's not that it's mutually exclusive, right? But you can kind of tailor how and what you teach according to what the guests' goals are there.
Tell us what else really stood out to you at this session.
Yeah, well, for me, from a ski perspective, this this one thing really blew my mind, and I think maybe less so for other people. But when I skied with Anne Shorley, she talked about her kind of three principles of skiing. One of them that we really focused on was moving laterally. And when we say laterally, literally moving from side to side. And she shared the story of her how when she was preparing, I think, for the national team and really learning to carve, she saw this image of a rodeo clown, and he was super angulated. Um, and it's because his movement was literally just jumping from side to side. And so that kind of clicked in her mind in terms of what she needed to do to really get her edges on well, her skis on a high edge. So we worked on that throughout one of the days, and it really pretty much achieved the two goals I had in my whole season without her even intending to address it, which is getting on my edges earlier and learning to extend my legs more laterally. Um, but yeah, I mean, I can share more about how she got us to do it, but it was a very kind of awkward looking, awkward feeling drill, but was really effective in what she wanted us to do.
I'm still stuck on the rodeo clown image, but I love that.
Yeah, yeah, we were all like, "What? What does even a rodeo clown do?" But yeah, she was able to kind of, really describe that image so vividly that we could all see it, and then apply it into our skiing in a way that really led us to that sensation she was looking for us to feel.
Well, I mean, just the agility and the quickness and the speed and the reaction you would have to have doing that. And just thinking about that with skiing, I really like that image. So,
Yeah.
tell us what you found out about equipment. Sounds like there was a very interesting presentation on equipment.
Yeah, there were also optional sessions in the afternoon to learn about ski and ski design and all of that information. And then we had another session on boots. And we had some incredible women boot fitters there. So Leslie Baker Brown from Blizzard Technica, and I think she leads the Women to Women program there. And that's been kind of ongoing, really thinking about capturing information from a women's anatomy perspective and designing boots and skis accordingly. Sam Tischendorf, might have said her last name wrong, and Mandy Fitzmayer were both there to just talk about how, from a women's anatomy, I think most of us know that the women's calf inserts lower than men's, and as a result, there's kind of more volume in our boots, and so the lower cuff sizes usually helps accommodate for more, but what it doesn't accommodate for is when I'm just standing there and kind of looking at my calves, I can see that my calves kind of extend beyond my heel. And so if you think about a forward lean, and you have to put all of that volume inside of there, the effective forward lean on a boot for someone with skinnier lower legs versus someone who has more muscle is going to be a lot higher. And as a result, this is something that Anne shared with me, is that to compensate for too much forward lean, we sit backwards slightly. So we might see that more in our female clientele. And as a result, it does several things to their skiing and to their body. One is if you're sitting back, you're not able to tuck the pelvis. And so all the forces that come through the snow goes into your back, and it could create, lower back pain. Um, it also could potentially create a sequential movement, just trying to kind of catch up to the other leg when you're already too far forward. Um, for me, it was really telling. I took a clinic earlier today with John May, who I love, and I've skied with him several times, and I asked him, "Am I sitting back?" And he said, thought about it, and said, "No, you're not doing your normal sitting back thing." and and it's because I had my boots reworked, and having a good boot fitter is incredibly important in that sense. But he was able to upright my cuff a little bit more and allow for the space I needed in order to stay in a more neutral-ish stance.
And
So
what did you notice in your skiing after that was done?
yeah, I well, personally, I didn't feel that much different. I could tell my quads weren't turned on when I was just standing around and kind of listening. Today was a bit of an anomaly. We had a pretty significant powder day, and we haven't skied powder in over a month, so my legs are just, burning slightly regardless. But it did feel um like everything was moving together better, and I felt like, oh, the one actually significant difference I felt in my body was at some point, I thought about tucking my pelvis, and I was able to do so. And I've tried that just last week, actually, because I have a bit of that anterior tilt, and trying to get it into a posterior tilt. I literally couldn't do it while I was moving. And so I was able to accomplish that. And now I have to change that movement pattern to 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 habitually posterior tuck slightly to avoid that pressure into my low back. So lots of other things boost wise too.
It
Um,
sounds like we might be having some guests on the podcast coming up very soon to talk about that in detail.
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the sessions I attended was with Carol Levine and Heidi at Linger. And they both kind of walked us through, well, what would happen if you put a strap around your liners so that there's a direct contact between your calf and then the liner, and then you put the booster strap on top of that, because some people like to put their booster straps um, underneath the shell, right over the liner, but it's still connected to the boot in the back. So having a separate strap just kind of create a little bit more, or to get rid of that space, that gap between your shin and your liner was something I've been playing around with, and it's pretty easy for anyone to do, and just kind of allowing for a more direct power transfer. Um, yeah, I mean, the two of them know so much about boots, so I think a dedicated podcast would be super useful.
So, what are your plans for the rest of the season? We've got a forecast 5 foot dump coming up this weekend, which is probably going to be not light, fluffy powder like you were getting in Utah, because I don't think the freezing level is all that low.
Yeah, well, we actually didn't have any fresh snow when we were in Utah, and it was surprisingly warm. Um, my plans for the rest of the season, well, next week I have my telemark exam, so I'm taking my tele too. So it was really great to get a different set of eyes on my tele skiing at the Women's Summit. And I'm heading to Alaska. I've got some trips coming up. Um, but from a summit perspective, it was just such a great experience. To ski with so many great women, both from a clinician perspective, that people I've collaborated with over the summer or over the past few years remotely, and getting to meet them in person. It was also really fantastic to demo CARV. Some of you, some of our listeners have probably heard about CARV. So they brought their new sensors out, and we were able to try that, and some I won't name of our clinicians' competitiveness came out, trying to beat their personal high scores. So that was really fun. And yeah, I mean, I feel like I always walk away from the Women's Summit on this high, and this um, uh, feeling connected, and also inspired, and just full of so much information in my brain that I'm probably still processing.
Well, it sounds like you're already planning for 26.
Yes, yep. So 2026 Women's Summit is in Steamboat. It'll likely be in a similar time frame. And we're super excited about that because I think Steamboat has expanded recently their terrain in the last maybe couple of years. And someone was quoting over 4,000 acres. Don't fact check me on that one. So that'll be great. And then I mean Intermountain and Solitude has just been fantastic in really supporting the Women's Summit this year, as well as all the sponsors. I mean, we got to demo skis from Rossignol, Blizzard, Stokely. I think Atomic was also there. Yeah, so the support has been incredible, and I think it'll only be better next year.
Ying Liu, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us on First Year. I really appreciate it. Love hearing about your experiences.
Thanks, George. Always a pleasure.
From the PSIA-AASI Satellite Studios in Corvallis, Oregon, I'm George Thomas.